This week, a very special episode of Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow. That's right, Halloween ain't over just yet. We're kicking off our new season, focusing on one of the scariest monsters ever to walk the face of the earth. I'm talking about the one and only, and thank God he's the only, Stephen Miller. Oof, this guy is a walking jump scare. At least Freddy Krueger enjoyed being around kids.
Children will be taught to love America.
Have the writers and producers of American Emperor created the ultimate bad guy? What lies ahead for this cretin, and what is his origin story? And did he go bald naturally, or did his hair just leave his head because it was uncomfortable and didn't want to be associated with him? What are we to make of his policies, and will he be sued for copyright infringement by the estate of Heinrich Himmler? Plus, do they really expect us to believe there's a woman out there who would marry this dude? That's right, you'll be alone again for the holidays, but Stephen Miller has someone. Nice work swiping right on Voldemort. This is what Dracula dresses up as on Halloween. And whether it's being the driving force behind the Trump character sending U.S. troops into U.S. cities, or just plain being creepy as fuck.
If you could only eat one condiment for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Okay, barbecue sauce.
Not mayonnaise?
No.
That's the only thing my husband eats.
With french fries or like period?
Period.
Okay, wow.
What lies in store for this character and his impact on the show? So gather the family around, unless they've been separated, and grab some popcorn to join us for a special spooky look into a person who makes it clear that God does indeed make junk. It's Stephen Miller Day here on Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow.
You have nothing. You are nothing. You can build nothing. You can produce nothing. You can create nothing.
All right, welcome to a very special edition of Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow. Obviously, Sir Lawrence Davies and the Trump character he inhabits are the undisputed stars of American Emperor. But every once in a while, a character will emerge from the show, sometimes from the slime, who just grabs a hold of the country's imagination and will not let it go. We've seen this a few times over the course of the show's history. We're seeing it now with a character carefully constructed by the show's writers and producers, who is right now becoming a force on the show, so much so that we thought we'd devote a special episode of our podcast to him. I'm talking, of course, of Stephen Miller, the 39-year-old deputy chief of staff, as portrayed on American Emperor by the human-serpent hybrid, whose name roughly translates to Sagoth, or Sagoth the Conqueror, or Sagoth the Destroyer, depending on where you're from in the universe. A ton to unpack here, and with me to help me do it, as always, author, filmmaker, and pop culture critic, Mr. Tom Robb. Welcome.
Very glad to be here. Thanks very much.
Tom, we've really had a coming out party as of late for this Stephen Miller character. Your thoughts?
To have a character so profoundly evil, so bad, so duplicitous, so unkind, so prejudiced, so backstabbing, so physically loathsome.
Now, we'll get into his origin story in a moment or two, but first let's talk about his emergence. American Emperor writers and producers seem to flavor their bad guy characters with additional layers. Sometimes it's comedy, like the Giulianis of the world being a fall-down drunk or openly farting during testimony.
A single witness, just like you.
Sometimes there's an underlying message of health, like with the Bannon character, a man whose nefariousness is mitigated by him looking like complete hell, to the point where it elicited some pathos from the audience. But with Miller, it seems the layer is creepiness. I mean, they are pedal to the metal here. There's the well-documented unfortunate looks, the lack of height. They even have the AOC character here setting this up recently on an episode. Take a look.
Stephen Miller is a clown. I've never seen that guy in real life, but he looks like he's like 4'10", and he looks like he is angry about the fact that he's 4'10".
They are not skimping on the creepiness here. They've been beating this drum for a while. Here's a memorable scene where he gives out dating advice. Take a look at this. Absolutely chilling.
We just have to address the elephant in the room. We're getting a lot of texts from women about Miller and his appearances and his appearance. Our audience at primetime believes you're some sort of sexual matador. What do you have to say for yourself?
Well, let me give advice to any young man that's out there. I'm married now, I have children, but I wasn't married that long ago. I was single, I was in the market. If you're a young man, it's very important in election season, who's looking to impress ladies, to be the alpha, to be attractive, the best thing you can do is to wear your Trump support on your sleeve. Show that you are a real man. Show that you are not a beta, right? Be a proud and loud Trump supporter, and your dating life will be fantastic.
I cannot wait to see the text tonight.
Do you think writers and producers are building to a Carrie type scenario where at some event, perhaps taking place in a gymnasium or something, the Stephen Miller character basically shuts the doors with his mind and kills everyone in there with a fiery inferno that he's manifested?
That would be a logical conclusion. A bucket of blood suspended on a rope, all the good-looking people, prom king and queen, etc., doused with blood, and then more violent fates for all the people that this character has kind of misperceived, has humiliated and taunted him. So as AOC pointed out, we have a diminutive character of questionable sexuality, bald as a cue ball, beady-eyed, shrill-voiced, impotent in every sense of the word, railing and screaming. It's not surprising that a pretty woman would find him off-putting.
I find they're paying homage to Stephen King's Carrie in a lot of places involving this character. There was that one scene where they showed in a flashback where Stephen Miller's parents sat Stephen Miller down and explained to him that they are all going to laugh at you. They don't say it in quite the maniacal way that Carrie's mother says it in the movie. They're more factual. They back it up with like facts, and they clearly have done research. Look, they're all going to laugh at you. We know they're all going to laugh at you. I felt that was an interesting tidbit.
Parents know when their children have special abilities, when their children have liabilities, when their children will be tormented justifiably. And giving them fair warning is just good parenting.
Let's talk about the design of this character. They're pulling from a variety of sources. There's a little bit of Nosferatu there. There's a Voldemort element. Experts will say there's a Goebbels element also kind of flavoring the composition. What are your thoughts?
Well, he clearly instantiates some of the most evil, duplicitous characters in history. We're talking about normalizing cruelty, unkindness, duplicity. So, yes, it's a very apt metaphor.
Let's talk a little bit about his origin story. We touched on this last season. He's played by a serpent-human hybrid. Writers and producers obviously had long-term plans for this character, but at first it was difficult to handle him on set. A litany of trainers were needed, armed guards on set, very similar to the situation of how velociraptors were handled on the set of Jurassic World. They obviously got a handle on that. Deaths related to serpents on set have been cut in half. I think they're comfortable featuring him more and more. What are you hearing?
I know that there are at least 5 wranglers that stand around him with shock rods and noose poles. He sheds quite regularly, which also involves a kind of slight shift in personality. And, I know they wanted Stanley Tucci for this initially, and he felt he couldn't be mean enough to do this. He will snap at a gaffer, a makeup woman. He's envenomed a number of crew members, but they have him under control. Sometimes entire scenes, he has a noose pole concealed under a collar, jerking him back to keep him from going out of control.
Supreme Court.
I'm talking
You
now.
really believe the Supreme Court
I'm talking now.
doesn't think you should be
any of
returned?
you-
Why was it unanimous?
You're done.
I heard the Tucci thing too, and obviously Tucci is a very gifted actor. Producers and writers, they were not happy. They had brought in the serpent-human hybrid, Sagoth, to read. They were not impressed. Then one producer asked Sagoth, in frustration almost, what rock did you crawl out from? And Sagoth was able to answer with specifics. He actually referenced the rock that he actually did crawl out from under. And that impressed writers and producers in that casting session, and the rest kind of like is history.
One problem they anticipated is that a lot of reptiles are ambisexual, and this actor, no different. So they guard against him becoming impregnated as much as him impregnating others.
Obviously, you do not want this creature like replicating itself. Now, his aversion to people of Latin descent is well documented, but there were a few things that even I was surprised to see included by writers and producers in his flashback scenes. One of them was this instance where he was very vocally upset about the amount of Spanish being spoken in high school. And of course, it turned out when he was complaining about this the most, he was actually complaining about it from within a Spanish class. So you have to have a rare combination of traits to be upset about Spanish being spoken in high school, especially when you're in Spanish class, like learning the language. Of course, the show also had a double message in there. They had the setting in a liberal progressive school who did not want to invalidate Stephen's feelings. So they went ahead and tried to teach Spanish without using the foreign language at all, which of course led to numerous kids failing the Regents. And it cost more than a few kids their spot at haughty Ivy League schools down the line. Now let's talk about his performance on the show. Clearly, he's at a disadvantage to other actors on the set, being a serpent-human hybrid. I mean, he's not studied acting like other cast members, but he does a good job considering here he is in a recent episode.
The light will defeat the dark. We will prevail over the forces of wickedness and evil. You cannot terrify us. You cannot frighten us. You cannot threaten us. Because we are on the side of goodness. We are on the side of God. You have no idea the dragon you have awakened.
Clearly, he doesn't do well memorizing long monologues. That is a feature of snakes. I don't know if they have great memories for that type of a thing. And you see him break into an improv. But as actors do, when you are improvising, you'll talk about what you know. And clearly he's doing that by talking about serpents. You see him bring up dragons. As an actor, do you think he's holding his own?
Well, I think it comes very natural. I think he's holding his own. I think he's gifted. I think to mention your reptilian brethren is natural. He's obviously proud, dragons and dinosaurs and turtles and hallucinogenic frogs and whatever cousins he has. I've certainly been known to sort of name drop my second cousins who are Polish royalty. So it's not surprising that a snake boy would want to mention, velociraptors and pterodactyls and other creatures of doom that he can gain stature by.
And there's also times where he does freeze on camera. Again, maybe a 100% human actor doesn't do this.
You've called the district judge's ruling blocking the deployment of National Guard in Oregon legal insurrection. Does the administration still plan to abide by that ruling?
Well, the administration filed an appeal this morning with the Ninth Circuit. The president has plenary authority.
Stephen? Stephen? Hey, Stephen, can you hear me?
When a snake is afraid or stunned, it will take a moment to kind of survey the area that it's around.
The actor needs to be milked of his venom at regular intervals. They try to do it during shooting because sometimes the actor doesn't notice it, but sometimes it causes a kind of freeze reflex. Because if you had this actor fully potent, fully venomized, and he was able to strike a lighting technician or a production assistant, you'd have a shutdown for a week.
Now, I understand there's a female character on the show positioned to play Miller's wife. Her name is Katie Miller. There's never really been a scene on the show where they were in the same shot, kind of like a Pacino De Niro thing up until the diner scene in Heat. Can you talk about the difficulty in casting for that role for a woman who needs to portray a woman who in real life would marry, kiss, or even fuck a character like Stephen Miller?
Well, I think they went, as they do with a number of the characters in the administration, to pageant winners or placers, and sometimes just entrants. They called first the Junior Miss pageant, the Miss America pageant, all the way down to Miss Home Depot, finally finding somebody who had a familiarity with animals. And let's remember, this actor's dressing room is a terrarium.
My understanding is she's the highest under 5 ever paid. Here she is in a recent episode.
You are married to Stephen Miller, so you are the envy of all women. What is that like?
A sexual matador, right?
What is it like being married to such a sexual matador?
He is an incredibly inspiring man who gets me going in the morning with his speeches being like, let's start the day. I am going to defeat the left and we are going to win.
Where do you put this exchange in the all-time unnerving images committed to film?
I think this is like something from Faces of Death, one of the kind of gotcha documentaries where people are kind of caught, you know, those predator tapes.
Chris Hansen stuff, yeah.
Guilty, humiliated, terrified, and they know their life is over.
Yeah, for me, it's right up there with the guy in the bear suit blowing the other guy in The Shining and the possessed girl from The Exorcist doing the backward spider walk down the stairs. Now, famously, the Miller character is behind some of the more ghastly ideas presented on American Emperor, the family separations, the deportations perpetrated by ICE, Alligator Alcatraz. Are there any ideas you've heard that writers and producers have come up with for the Miller character to pitch that have been rejected by showrunners? And have you heard of any upcoming ideas he'll pitch that viewers can look forward to?
There were all sorts of things that he pitched as an actor, like infant electrocution, public execution by incineration, you know, that kind of thing.
I've heard he pitched an idea to the president. We would be pardoning scorpions and hornets. I mean, is that necessary? Also, he wanted to add ticks and maggots to endangered lists to protect them.
Bed bugs, typhus lice. You know, he wanted just a sort of cornucopia of pests. He wanted the border wall to be a wall of fire that would turn on after people tried to cross to get a number of presents. There was sort of a giant 100-mile-long line of piñata-like candy and gifts and silver objects. And once people tried to seize them, children mostly, a giant 50-foot ball of fire would engulf them. This was deemed expensive and maybe unnecessarily unkind.
Let's do a quick true or false round here before we break of what you've been able to verify from his backstory. Any truth to him wanting children to face adults in professional face slap contests, aka power slap competitions?
I think it's one of many. He also wanted premature newborns to take the ice water challenge.
It'd be very damaging.
These are things that I think our better angels are putting a hold on them while we examine them.
He is an advocate of something called dude wipe accountability. He wants to hold each American male accountable for what they've done to a dude wipe. I'm all for accountability in government, but like we want the government asking you specifically about how you're using dude wipes, what are on the dude wipe, what are you wiping from yourself. I mean, it just seems like a terrible road to go down.
Yeah, this is something so incomprehensible to me, I can't even comment. But I do think it's invasive, possibly unconstitutional.
All right, when we come back, we're going to answer some of the questions sent in by you, the listeners. That's right, Talking Trump, Talk Back. When we return, you're listening to Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow. Okay, so some good news as we head into our new season. We've been working very hard, as you know, to get a sponsor for the podcast. We've been going after the big dogs, you know, the companies that sponsor the podcast all over the country, the stamps.com, the ZipRecruiters. We haven't really made much progress with them, but we did have kind of a breakthrough with the company called BetterHelp. I'm sure you've heard of them. They are a huge sponsor of podcasts across the country. I'm sure you've heard their advertisements, so we're very excited. Now, they're not going to be advertising on the podcast directly, but they do have a subsidiary of their company that they will try us out with, and everything goes well, they said they may have a meeting with us at the end of the year or something to discuss further steps. So very exciting. Now, of course, everyone knows BetterHelp, and I suppose while it's a great service that has a lot of affordable rates, it's not exactly cheap or free. And BetterHelp, the company, feels like if you are in need of some help, you shouldn't be shut out because you can't afford BetterHelp. So people who fall into that category, and for some reason they feel like part of that audience listens to this show, they have a service that they offer that doesn't have all the bells and whistles of BetterHelp, but is still something that they could use, and it's called OKHelp. So, all right, here goes. Our first sponsor, even though they're not really paying us. So, OKHelp. With the holidays around the corner and daylight getting shorter and shorter and the weather getting colder and colder, it's easy to feel a little down. And if you can't borrow money from your dad or your sister to get BetterHelp because you owe them money from the last time that you borrowed from them, you might want to consider OKHelp. Now, how much does it cost? Well, how much do you have on you right now? Well, with OKHelp, when you call one of our therapy people and they pick up the phone, if they're available to pick up, they'll be there for you 100% a lot of the time. And they'll be that ear that you need as long as it doesn't get them in trouble with their boss at their other job. Or if you're really in a jam, you can have access to our mental health data system where you just enter in on the computer what's bothering you and our AI will tell you what it thinks you should do. Sometimes a computer telling you to don't let it bother you, dude, is just what you need. So check out OKHelp, until you're back on your feet and you can afford a reputable and better online mental health service. Use promo code American Emperor Aftershow for an additional 10% off. All right, welcome back to Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow. I'm with author, filmmaker, and pop culture critic, Mr. Tom Robb. Time now for a segment where we answer questions from you, the audience. This is Talking Trump. Talk back. By the way, if you want to send us a question, hit us up at Instagram at American Emperor Aftershow. Our first question comes from Rebecca Conway of Madison, Wisconsin, and she says, Tom, settle a bet for me. What's a better word to describe Stephen Miller? Fiend or ghoul? Remember, a steak dinner is riding on this. All right. What do you think, Tom? Fiend or ghoul?
Well, a fiend is a more universal application. Ghoul is sort of specific, but maybe more evil. But it's sort of supernatural, implies the netherworld. It's a tough call for me, but I'm going to have to say fiend.
First of all, I think you're a master of language. You know what? I'm going to go step in line and back you up on that. You get 2 votes for fiend here, Rebecca. Thanks for the question, and I hope you enjoy that steak. All right, our next question comes from Kyle Remington of Concord, New Hampshire, and he asks, do you see the show American Emperor being sued or even being taken down permanently by a lawsuit over the Stephen Miller character brought by musician Steve Miller of the Steve Miller Band?
I haven't heard that, but that's always a danger. I think the show's attitude is to keep on rocking me, baby. I would bet a big old jet airliner that he just sits back and enjoys the show.
I feel bad for Steve Miller. I'm sure every once in a while likes to pour himself a glass of wine and Google his own name. That would be nothing but a beautiful trip down Nostalgia Avenue, hearing all sorts of wonderful things about how great a song The Joker is, or even Abracadabra. But now he's faced with seeing his name associated with mass deportations. It's got to be a little unnerving to him. If you're watching Steve Miller of the Steve Miller Band, said keep on rocking, fly like an eagle, whatever you want. Our final question comes from Amy Howell of Athens, Georgia. And she asks, do you think, or what do you know about whether or not the Miller character actually freaks out the Trump character? And the same question regarding the real life actors on set. Sir Lawrence Davies? Is he freaked out by the serpent-human hybrid who plays Miller? Now, before you answer that, let's talk about how the Trump character views him, because there's two things going on here. The actual fictional character of Trump, how he views him, and how the actor, Sir Lawrence Davies, who plays Trump, deals with him. They're both clearly, in my opinion, freaked out. Let's look at how the show handles this.
But I want to thank Stephen Miller, who's right back in the audience right there. I'd love to have him. I love watching him on television. I'd love to have him come up and explain his true feelings. But maybe not his truest feelings. That might be going a little bit too far.
All right, well, what do you think? Is the Trump character on camera unnerved by the Miller character? And what are you hearing about the interaction between the two actual actors?
Lawrence Davies understands the efficacious nature of this character in propelling the plot line forward in storytelling, but I think he's personally nauseated. He refuses to eat in the same room, which doesn't come up often, but sometimes Stephen Miller character is walked, or rather slithered, into the commissary to interact. I think that he's a professional. He's going to do his job, tell the story, react the way a Shakespearean trained actor will. But on a personal note, without telling too many tales out of school, he wants to throw up much of the time.
Yeah, I mean, there was one instance, obviously, that made the headlines was much like a cat will kill some sort of prey and bring it to you as the owner and present it as a gift. The Miller serpent had gone outside, killed I believe it was an elk, and brought it to the feet of Davies to present him a gift or honor him, and that did not go over well at all.
No, that's not the kind of gift he wants while preparing for a scene.
I agree 100%. All right, stick with us, people. When we come back, we're going to close the show with a couple of predictions of what to look out for in the coming weeks. More Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow, when we return. All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow. Right now, before we close out the show, a couple of quick predictions for the coming weeks. I'm going to go first here. Stephen Miller has used white supremacist dog whistles and is heavily implied that he identifies with white supremacism as a life philosophy, as a character, but he never comes out directly and says it. He never literally says it. I think what you're going to see is him finally saying that he is a white supremacist. And once he does, you'll see groups like the Aryan Brotherhood, Hell's Angels, other white groups come out and sue him because they're concerned with his overall sliminess and whether or not that will impugn their reputations. I mean, these white supremacists, they still want to score with chicks, and they know that Stephen Miller is a proven vagina dehydrator. I think that will trigger the Kerry event. He'll just lose it, and that might prove to be an interesting way to end the season.
Right, that he's being rejected by the people he's worked so hard to ingratiate himself with. He's created all these devious plans and been the architect of so much cruelty, to then be rejected by Klansmen and stuff who find him too distasteful and unpleasant. I think that's a very good prediction. I predict we're going to have a very special episode where an egg, a giant egg, is discovered in the Oval Office, and the Stephen Miller character tries to evade responsibility and blame it on some of the other snake-like characters, and then the actual paternity of the egg will be revealed. And we're going to find something very special about that. It's an unexpected character, believe me.
Wow, I like that a lot for many different reasons. We could reveal that there's other snake characters on the show, which is very interesting. And also, snakes, as you know, often will break into a nest of a bird and they will consume eggs. That's part of their diet. Maybe the hybrid snake that is the Miller character sees this egg in the Oval Office, panics, and makes up something like, "That's my baby." No, it's not my baby. I'm going to go eat it. And he eats the egg in front of everybody. Gross. All right, that's it for this episode. For Tom Robb, I'm Christopher Lansing. Thanks for joining us, and please check out and subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. The links are in the show notes. See you next time.